Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Medical Assistant with Miss K. My name is Kendra, aka Miss K. I became a medical assistant in 2004 and a medical assistant instructor in 2011. So today I want to talk about the different certification exams that we talk about mostly on this channel. One of the main questions that I get from you guys is which exam should I take? Now, the first thing I always say is you want to take the exam that your school is offering. Okay, so if you're in school wondering what certification you should get, you're going to take whatever exam your school is offering, especially if they're paying for it. Okay. So that's where I always start. Then the next question I go, the next thing I ask a person is whether they had an externship, and then just some other questions. So let's talk about each of the exams. And of course, there are more exams out there, but these are the three that we focus on the channel. Of course, my study videos help you guys with all of the certifications because they do all ask the same type of questions. But today, we're just going to focus on the CMA, AAMA, the RMA, and the CCMA because, some certifications you won't even qualify for anyway. So let's look at what the eligibility requirements are for each exam. Okay, so let's start with the CMA, AAMA. Okay, and I'm going to link all of this below the video so you guys can see it too. Okay, so the requirements for the CMA, you got to be a student or graduate of a medical assistant program that is accredited by the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs or the Accrediting Bureau of Health Education Schools. So that's one of the questions that I always ask people too is, did you go to accredited school? Okay. Or you had to have been previously a CMA, to the AAMA, or you had to be a medical assistant instructor at an accredited school. Okay. And then if you don't meet any of these requirements, you may have to go the alternative pathway route. Now, I won't get into all of this here because it'll be linked below. But when you go here, then click on the requirements. If you know you don't meet the previous requirements, then you can click on alternative pathway and see if you may qualify for this exam through that route. Okay. So now let's look at the AMT. Okay. Let's look at the RMA through AMT. So let's look at the requirements. So the education route, the applicant should be a graduate within the past 4 years or scheduled to graduate from an accredited MA program or program that is housed within an accredited institution. So also must be accredited. Also very important, you must have 720 hours of instruction that includes at least 160 hours of externship. So this is always the first question I ask because I've had people ask me, should they take the RMA? I always say, did you have an externship? Because that is a requirement. And then you had to have had 720 hours of instruction. So you couldn't have just gone to a school that's, 6 weeks and then not have an externship and think you can take the RMA. Okay. So this is why it's so important for you guys to even see if you're eligible in the first place. Okay. Now let's look at the competency and work-based learning route. The applicant shall have completed within the last 4 years a hybrid education or work experience medical assistant program that either has a combination of didactic clinical experience to equal 720 hours or shall have completed a structured, approved alternative training course that's a minimum of 500 hours, okay, which must include 160 hours of externship. Okay, so you have to have either the two and you have to demonstrate practical competence. Okay, so that is the competency and work-based route. Okay. Now let's look at the work experience route. The applicant shall be employed as a medical assistant for a minimum of 3 years within the past 7 years. So within the past 7 years, you have to have a minimum of 3 years work experience, 3 years of full-time employment of at least 36 hours per week. Okay. The experience must include both clinical and administrative duties. And one thing I didn't mention when we were on the education route is that you do have to upload your transcripts. Okay, so you have to show proof of all of this. So at my former school, our students, they took the RMA and they were able to, take the exam because there's an option. They were able to choose to take the exam first and then submit everything later. But even if they did that and they passed certification, they wouldn't even get their certification mailed to them until they uploaded their transcripts and showed proof that they completed externship. Okay. So they do require documentation. You have to submit documentation for the RMA. And then here, as it says, you need a copy of your high school diploma, GED or equivalent, your RMA employment verification form. This is if you're going a work experience route. And then also a valid CPR card. Okay, so they are big on documentation. And then the military route, the applicant shall be a recent graduate or scheduled to graduate from a former medical services training program of the United States Armed Forces and must have graduated within the last 4 years. All right. And then this also requires documentation. Okay. Instructor route. The applicant shall be currently instructing in an accredited medical assistant program and shall have completed a course of instruction in a healthcare discipline related to medical assistant and shall have a minimum of 5 years of full-time teaching experience in a medical assistant discipline that encompasses a range of both clinical and administrative competencies that are broadly representative of core medical assistant duties. An applicant who has 5 years of teaching experience but more than 1 year shall provide documentation of at least 3 years of full-time clinical work experience in a healthcare profession in which the scope of practice is commensurate with or exceeds the medical assistant scope of practice, okay? And the required documentation, you have to have a copy of your transcript. You have to have documentation of 5 years of working experience. If you've been instructing for less than 5 years, you must have, again, a copy of your transcript, and then documentation of more than 1 year of current work experience, instructing a medical assistant program, which is going to be verified by AMT. 3 years of full-time clinical experience within the last 6 years must also be verified. Okay. So this is going to be very important, guys. So this is why I recommend, I always mention in my videos, make sure you go look yourself. I know I mention it in the videos, but I always say, go look yourself because you never know. Okay. Now the CCMA, most people go this route when they have been out of school for a long time because it is the easiest to obtain. Because for this exam, you got to possess a high school diploma or GED, high school equivalency, or scheduled to earn a high school diploma or GED, high school equivalency in the next 12 months. Plus, you must have completed a medical assistant training or education program within the last 5 years, or you must possess a high school diploma, GED, or high school equivalency, plus 1 year supervised work experience in a medical assistant field within the last 3 years. So notice they require 1 year, okay, within the last 3 years, or 2 years of supervised work experience in a medical assistant field within the last 5 years, okay? So this is why a lot of people end up going this route, because it is a little bit easier to obtain. Whereas you notice with the other two, you have to have graduated from an accredited school and they require more work experience to be eligible. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful and it answered your questions as to whether or not, you know, you should take the CCMA, the RMA, and the CMA, AAMA. Some of you probably saw this and realized you don't qualify for some of these certification exams that I mentioned. And of course, there are others out there, NCCT, CCBMA. There are other certifications, but these are the main three. And then also, don't forget, guys, I do have an online study guide that helps with certifications. And when I was creating that online study guide, I did use the test plan for all of the exams just to make sure that I was covering everything that could possibly be on the test. You could get that at marefreshercourse.com. It will also be linked below. Between my free videos here on YouTube and my MA Refresher course, you guys should have everything you need to be successful at passing certification. Make sure you guys like the video if it was helpful. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. See you guys.